Hi, I'm Doug from Dynamic Computing and welcome to episode 134 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. This week we're going to be revisiting my lovely new CDTV. If you haven't watched my video on the CDTV I picked up earlier this summer, it's right up there. Here's a beautiful picture of it. Really love it. I ordered some goodies to make my CDTV even better and more powerful and allow it to run as a full-blown Amiga. And I wanted to share some of these goodies with you. Now, Commodore had the foresight, thankfully, to make the CDTV expandable and be able to handle some of these expansions. And really awesome is some of these parts are still being made today. Let's take a look at a few things right this way. Now, interestingly enough, Commodore did add a mouse port and a keyboard port to the CDTV, but unfortunately they are not compatible with existing Amiga and mice and keyboard connections. Now, of course, there were adapters you could get to make an Amiga 4000 keyboard work on here, but in general these are not 100% compatible with existing Amiga stuff. Don't know why they did it. Now, CDTV keyboards and mice are notoriously difficult to find nowadays, so just be lucky and blessed if you find one of the original black ones. But let's see what we can do about this. And here is where we get to our first expansion we're going to talk about. This little cord plugs right into the mini DIN on the back of the CDTV, and it's got some conversion chips in there to allow you to plug a standard PS2 keyboard in here. Now, this is currently sold on eBay by our good friend 24 Mata. It costs about $30 and really literally allows you to use just about any PS2 keyboard on here. Let's take a look at the keyboard I use. Right now I'm using this compact keyboard, a PS2 keyboard. It's got black keys, it's got a fairly good feel to it, and I kind of like the silver and gray look. Now, I do have some black PS2 keyboards and I may switch over to that, but I kind of like this one. It's kind of neat. Now, one thought I have is getting a very small PS2 keyboard and then elevating the CDTV, putting some little legs on it, and getting a keyboard that actually slides underneath, kind of like the Amiga 1000 keyboard. Now, I would probably have to sacrifice the numeric keypad, but I can live with that. I think it'd be kind of a neat thing to do. Let's plug it in. This one literally cannot be easier. It simply plugs right into the keyboard connector here, and then this attractive little unit just kind of hangs off the back, and it's ready to plug in our PS2 keyboard. We plug this little guy in, and now we literally have a fully functional PS2 keyboard on our CDTV. We'll play with the keyboard in just a minute, but let's move on to our next little goodie. Next in our collection of goodies is another board, this one also from our good friend 24 Mata, available on eBay, and I will have links to all these in the description. What this does, this little beauty adds, ta-da, has two DB9 connectors on here on this little cable. Now, what this does is this fits right on the U75 chip, which we're about to show you, intercepts the signals, and then allows a standard joysticks and standard mice to work with the CDTV. Let's see how it mounts. So as you can see, there are no DB9 ports on the back of the CDTV. We need to get the signals from somewhere to add them, and that is right here. That is the U75 socket that is normally populated with a nice little chip, but I took the chip out to put right in here like it's supposed to be. Now, what we do is we just take this little machine. See, it's got the pins there to hook into that U75 socket. What chip is that? 252609-02. And let's take a look at where it plugs into. Make sure you have the notches lined up. That's the notch right there. And this fits right into the U75 socket. My head is probably in the way. There we go. Then you just slot it firmly into the U75 socket, put the chip right in the top. Now these long cables here, what he recommends doing is removing the CD-ROM cable, which is right over here, and then routing it underneath and routing it out the expansion port. I don't want to do that. I've seen some 3D printed back plates that you can mount these DB9 connections onto, but I've got some other ideas of how I want to mount them. So right now I'm just leaving them hanging off the back until I decide exactly how I want to do it. Now, so we have one mouse and one joystick port. There's some caveats to this little guy to make them work properly on Workbench, but we'll take a look at that when we get her booted up. Let's move on to the next upgrade. Now, we want to upgrade the power of the CDTV itself. Now, there are accelerators available for it. I mean, you could probably even theoretically put a vampire in the little guy and have it work. But I'm okay with the standard 68,000 for now. I may do something in the future, and there are certain ROMs that you can get for the CDTV that allow you to use a faster accelerator. But in this case, all I want to do is increase the RAM. The CDTV, of course, comes with 1 megabyte of chip RAM. It has the ECS Agnes on it, but just the OCS Denise. I was wrong last time. What this is, this has a little bit of logic chips here, and it's got 8 megabytes of RAM. But what's this curious socket it plugs into? Let's take a look on the CDTV board and see right where this little guy goes. Now, right here on the CDTV, we have this. It's called the diagnostic slot right here. And apparently, this slot actually passes through most of the signals that would be in the slot on the side port on an Amiga 500. Not all of them, but most of them. And it has enough signals pass through where we can use this for memory expansion. So this is what we do. We just take our little 8 megabyte memory expansion and we stick her right on here. Make sure she's good and tight. And look at that. Just like magic, we now have 8 megabytes of fast RAM plugged into our Amiga CDTV. Now, just like the other devices, no drivers are required. That just recognizes the memory, and we'll see the results of that in a bit. Now, there are also, and I looked into these, there is also a cool little device, I'll put a link in the description, that plugs into the 68,000 socket, and then you put the chip on top of it, and it adds 8 megabytes right on the 68,000 socket. A lot of people use those for the CDTV. They work equally as well. But I'm keeping that socket, the 68,000, free for maybe some future updates I want to do, maybe some other components I want to put in here. Let's move on to our next goodie. Now, of course, the CDTV has a disk drive port for plugging a standard Amiga floppy in there. And I've got a couple external floppies that would work just nicely in here. But we want to do something a little bit different. Now, a couple of, maybe a year or two ago, I reviewed this little beauty right here. This is Extravaganza's external floppy emulator. This uses the same software as the Gotek and exactly works like a Gotek. You see, I have a flash drive in here. Then I've got a little OLED panel right there for viewing it. Plugs right into the floppy port. This is recognized as DF0 on the CDTV because there's no internal floppy connector at all. So anything plugged into the back is DF0. So we just take this little honey right here, plug her right into the disk drive port, and we have a beautiful floppy emulator. Now, what I really probably should do is get a cool black case for this. So I'll check and see if Extravaganza has any cases that he's maybe designed for it. And what would really be cool is if I could get some longer cables for this display and an extension for the 3 buttons for it, somehow route them through the CDTV and mount them to the front or the top. That would be really, really slick. Now, I've mentioned the other week that my CDTV has excellent video output through S-Video. I use it all the time, and the quality is actually fantastic. This is an NTSC unit, so we've got S-Video out, composite out, and RF out, in addition to standard RGB video. Now, again, I'm perfectly content using S-Video out, but could we do better? Chris Edwards the other week reviewed the cool RGB to HDMI that plugs right in here, and I'll put a link to his video right there if I can. And that's great, that's fantastic, but I'm so content with the quality of the video, I don't think I'm going to do that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to take this beautiful adapter from our friend Francis, which is an RGB to component adapter. And I'm going to take this little guy and plug it into the RGB port right here. There we go. Now, this, and I've got a review for it right here, provides component video output from your from any Amiga with an RGB port. The quality is literally second to none. It's so bright and so sharp and so crisp. Now, one of the reasons I'm doing this is this will hook right up to my RetroTink. Another link to a video, the RetroTink, and allow me to capture right on my computer or right on one of my capture devices. This goes to the RetroTink converts it into HDMI, and poof, we have incredible quality video output from our CDTV. But are we done? Nay, nay. We're not done because we want to add a hard drive to our CDTV. So our good friend AD 2007, link in the description, provides this SCSI interface for the CDTV. Now this is pretty much the same as the SCSI interface he makes for my made for my A570 CD-ROM. Absolutely works great. You get maybe 1 to 2 megabytes per second out of it, and this mounts beautifully right into the expansion bay of the CDTV right there. And you see you got a little SCSI, or a little connector in there. Now, disappointingly, it looks like there's a little space inside there, so you could put a little hard drive or maybe a blue SCSI or something in there, but they just don't fit. It's just too tight to fit anything on this 50-pin connector and then mount it inside without maybe taking the whole motherboard out and modifying some stuff. So what I'm doing is I am using my SCSI to SD right here, an external SCSI to SD that I usually use on my A570. And I've got a 4 gig card in there and Workbench 1.3 on here. This actually works really well. Now, unlike my A570, this device here doesn't seem to provide enough power to run this, so I do have to plug in USB power to get it to boot, but that's not the end of the world. Let's take a closer look at this device before we install it. First of all, we have it actually mounts like this. We have a SCSI enable and disable switch right here. Flip that, turns off the SCSI, then the CD boots just like it normally would. It boots right into CDTV mode. Flip it up, you turn your SCSI back on, these lights come on. Flip it over. Right here, you have a little jumper that says 7 and XTAL, all right? Basically what that is, when it's jumpered to the right there, this thing works in 16 megahertz mode. When it's jumpered to the left, it works in 7 megahertz mode for compatibility with some devices, but it slows the entire thing down because it turns off SCSI sync. Then right here, we have a header for an LED. So I could actually run a nice long cable right from there to the front of the CDTV and have a nice LED blink whenever the hard drive is accessed. Let's look how easy it is to install this little guy. And get you out of the way. Basically, there's a little rail system right in the top that this slides right into. See, it's right on the rails now, and it just slots right in. Give it a push. It's installed. Again, 0 drivers required for this or any of the other components. The RAM board from ADEEE 2007 needs no drivers. This joystick and mouse interface needs no drivers. This needs no drivers. This needs no drivers. And this needs no drivers. Basically, Amiga takes care of everything. Now when I'm ready to go, I just plug this little guy in, and you notice it's actually upside down. That's because the SCSI connector is upside down. That plugs right in. I've now added 4 gigabyte hard drive basically to my CDTV. So we've got everything installed. We've got our video solution, hard drive solution, floppy solution, joystick and mouse solution, PS2 keyboard solution, memory solution, all installed in the CDTV. Let's get this thing turned around and boot it up and see what she can do. We have all of our new upgrades and goodies plugged into the CDTV. We even have an Atari joystick and a Wizard mouse right here. I'll have to try and find a black mouse to match it here. I have some ideas on that. And in the back, we have our RGB component. We have our SCSI external drive. We have our little external GoTech. On this is the same on this is the same Workbench 1.3 that I use on my A570. Now, let's turn her on and see what happens. We're going to power her up, and we're going to take a look at the screen. Nice Sony Bravia TV here. I hear some action. I see some Workbench 1.3 coming up. And I would have to say, that booted really, really fast. Look at that. Let's take a closer look. We're just going to do some live screen capture here. Now, first thing you'll notice is that the mouse is not working. And that's because on the joypad, or the controller that comes with it, we need to switch between joystick and mouse mode by pushing the little Joy mouse button. As soon as we do that, then our mouse should wake up. Now we have a fully functional mouse on here. We're going to go in, take a look at Workbench. Hello. What do we have here? Now you will notice that the standard keyboard works absolutely fine. Is a test. Everything works great. Numeric keypad works perfectly. There's two ways to reboot using the keyboard. One of them is window control, which is basically Amiga control, or you can hit the pause key 2 times on this keyboard interface, and it will send a reboot command to the CDTV, which is, you know, kind of cool. We'll let this reboot again. There we go, all booted up in just a few seconds. The mouse absolutely works perfectly. Once you hit that Joy mouse button on the remote control, the mouse works absolutely great. I've had 0 issues. The speed of the hard drive is nice and quick. For instance, we look at all the files on the entire hard drive here. Reads them just beautifully fast. Everything works great. Let's launch a few little programs, see how it works. All right, let's go in here to our work drive. We'll go to graphics and Photon Paint. That's a fun program. Now it launches nice and quick off the hard drive here. Much faster than floppy. And we'll load up a file. Let's see what we got here. Oh, this is a good one. This is one of the ones that comes on the Photon Paint disc. And you see that that works absolutely perfectly. We are absolutely fine if we want to do a little word processing on here. ProWrite 3.3 launches absolutely perfectly, nice and speedy. And of course, because it's a CDTV, there's also a parallel port. So if we wanted to print things out, we could hook a printer right up to it. And I'm in caps lock mode. This is a test. Nice and fast. Now, if we have an audio CD, like my pal Joe's audio CD here, I can just pop that right in the drive, the CD drive for the CDTV. And there is a program that comes with A570 that I put on here that works fine with the CDTV. Music, A570, CD play. And this allows you just to crank up the tunes right from Workbench. We'll turn that down a little bit. And of course, while the CD is playing, you can go do anything else you want to do. This is a deluxe paint.
She's telling me tales of my mother's childhood, how they got by. Years of war.
Hardly slows anything down at all. Yay! And speaking of music, one of my goals for this particular machine is to create a music entertainment machine, as it's designed to be. Now, of course, we can play CDs on it, as I just showed you, but I've also got Deli Tracker on here, which is a decent mod player. I can also put on Hippo Player and Eagle Player. They both work fine in 1.3, but I've gone ahead and put on a couple of hundred mods on here from a disc that I have. It's a disc from 1992, 1991 of all kinds of demos and mods. So let's take a look. Updating it here, there should be about 680 files. Some of them are README files, but a lot of them are just really good mod files. And we'll crank one up here, see how it handles it. All right. Here's a fun one, let's see. Gilligan's Island. Playback is absolutely fantastic. And of course, just like with any Amiga, even a 68,000 one, everything still works fine with it playing in the background. Not bad for a 68,000 chip, huh? Nice CAD program there. So one of the goals is to create some playlists of cool mods and be able to play back those at any time. Let's take a look at another cool thing that this 68,000 base machine can handle. And what do we want to do if we want to actually play a CDTV title with the hard drive installed and we're booted up to Workbench 1.3 on here? No problem at all. You can just pop the disk right in. We'll pop in Advanced Military Systems. And in a few seconds, you're going to see it pop right up on the screen. There it is. Yay! Once you double click a CDTV title, usually there'll be some kind of launcher that works. Not always, but like in this case, the launcher works just fine. And the Advanced Military Systems program comes up just like normal, which is awesome. So here, we're at the Advanced Military Systems main menu, and I've got my lovely Atari 2600 joystick, and the joystick works just fine for maneuvering around in the program. So it responds to joystick control, it still responds to the remote, no problem at all. And if you want this little beauty to act just like a normal CDTV again, all you have to do is power it off, and then in the back with the SCSI, flip that little thing down. We'll pop the CD out of there, and when I turn it on now, she acts exactly like a regular CDTV, coming up with a nice CDTV spinny logo. Everything works, just no hard drive. And none of the software that I've tested with this particularly cares that it's got 8 megs of RAM on it. It all runs just fine. So how much did all this cool stuff set me back? The PS2 keyboard adapter, 30 bucks. The SCSI CD-ROM, or the SCSI interface, maybe $85. The RAM, was it like 50 bucks, something like that for the RAM, 60 bucks maybe. I already owned the component interface, the RGB component interface, but those are like 25, I think. SCSI to SD, that's one of the more expensive things. That was like $100 for that. So you have to drop a couple of bucks in order to get everything working the way you want to on a CDTV. But it's not bad, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there. Everything comes out just fine. As I mentioned, this is going to become a music center for me, playing CDs, playing mod files, playing demos, things like that. And it's going to get a nice little position right up there, probably somewhere near that floating 1540 drive sitting on top of a speaker with my audio equipment. I'm just going to hook it up there. It'll be a nice little piece of audio equipment, be able to play it back anytime I want to. It's going to be kind of cool. Now, I'd mentioned in a previous video that the CDTV introduced this technology called CDXL for playing back small video files in a little window. I'm going to be doing a lot of experimenting with that, seeing how it plays back. I've already tried it with the HV6 files that I did a video on, 3 or 4 years ago now, where it plays back animations and videos in ham6 mode, full screen, right from the hard drive. They work perfectly. I'll show you some of those at another time. I'm dabbling with the idea of getting the newer ROMs for it. I really don't need them. With what I intend on doing with this machine, Workbench 1.3 is fine, just playing back mod files and CDs. I've got all my other Amigas with Amiga OS 3.2.1 for my really big stuff. This is just going to be for fun and entertainment. One thing I do intend on doing is putting a switch on it so I can easily switch between NTSC and PAL without using the degrader program to switch between them. I'd mentioned in my last video, the thing has both a PAL clock and an NTSC clock, and the ECS Agnes in there can switch between them via software, via hardware. So I'm going to work on getting a switch put in this little guy too. And here you see my wonderful patrons scrolling across a fantastic game of Xenon 2, which is one of the best games ever on the CDTV. It's absolutely fantastic. Hope you can hear me over all that cool audio. But thanks to my patrons, you guys are absolutely wonderful. If you're interested in joining up, pop on over to patreon.com/10mark and you can join in the fun. I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot for joining me today. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done it already. I love to hear your comments about what you've done to your CDTVs. I've gotten some great ideas from you from the last video. Really appreciate it. Please comment below. Please like. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. All the links are in the description. And all the links where you can buy this cool hardware are right in the description. You can't usually get most of these in one of the vendor stores. They're all eBay. If they don't show that they have them in stock, just send a message to the guys and ask them if they can make some more. That's what I do. And he says, yeah, sure, I'll put 3 up next week. And they put a couple pieces up for me. I'd really appreciate that. But until next time, this is Doug from 10 Minute Amiga Retrocast, signing out.